Hi y'all. Today I'm going to show you what the assembly process looks like for these battery boxes that we've been building. So a lot of the prep work that we've done has made this to where it's going to go together pretty smoothly, but it's always important to pay attention and focus when you're doing any of this work to make sure that we get it right. So we're going to make all of our connections really secure. We're going to use a torque wrench to put them together. We're going to use this conductive carbon assembly paste. And I have a prototype over here to my left that I can look at to reference. Make sure that I don't make any mistakes. But I'm going to throw this together. And hopefully, in the next video, or the one after that, we'll see some electricity coming out of these. I've continued to do my testing. I've had some disappointing results with a few of the cells. None of them are as high capacity as they were supposed to be, but for the price I paid, and if I get a little compensation from the seller, it'll probably work out okay anyway. These assemblies I put together in an earlier video, and it was really important to make sure that the lugs were aligned in a way that was going to be beneficial later. Otherwise, you're fighting the twist of the wire and things don't lay smoothly. So this was all planned out. And I have a Newton meter torque wrench here with a Phillips screwdriver tip in it. And I am planning to use 5 Newton meters as how tight I tighten these. Feels awfully tight. I'm going to back that off. I think 4 is going to be enough. I do not want to strip these. There's 4. Yeah, that feels about right. 4. I'm going to go a little bit more. I'm trying to find. Yeah, I think I can do 5. I think that these torque wrenches, the first couple of times you use it, they're a little bit sticky. Yeah, I think 5 is really the right number. Okay. Scary. All right. And then the next thing that's going to go on will be the one that carries this on across to the disconnect here. Now, in the video I did before, I showed that I made these 3 different links. And it's really good that I did, because they line out across there. And then this is going to line up just great. So, a little paste. This is some really messy stuff. When you're taking time to focusing on not getting that on you is probably a worthwhile use of your mental energy, because it is a mess. Again, this is a Ceplos BMS. Be careful, Ray. A Ceplos BMS, and this is a 200 amp BMS. I will never be running 200 amps through it. I really like the way this is coming together. It feels right. No matter how much I try, I still get this stuff on me. A little alcohol and it comes off. If you're ever wondering if you're able to be careful enough to not spread germs and bacteria, work with this stuff for a little while and you'll find out how easy it is to touch things you didn't intend to and spread things that you didn't intend to. Boy, howdy. It will show you how careless we can be. All right, next is the main battery negative, and that comes to the top. Actually, I can go ahead and put this other one from this disconnect. This one comes to here, and it angles towards the disconnect. And then this one comes in in the other direction and loops around. I'll put that on in a second. Let's go ahead and get the torque on this one. And this carbon paste helps to overcome any roughness. I have already cleaned these terminals, but they get dirty easily, and this carbon paste helps with corrosion and with conductivity. All right, that's all ready, and I can go ahead and install it in the box. Before I do that, I have a fuse in the bottom, and it's already laying there, but I need to go ahead and install the screws that secure it into the bottom. I'm using number 8 by 3/4 inch screws. And I don't want to get too crazy with these. When I'm fastening things that are made of plastic into this wooden box, I want them to be only secure enough, because it's really easy to break plastic. So what I want to do is just barely get it to where it's snug. I can feel with my hand better than I can with that drill. So I finished that up with my hand. Now it's ready to go, and this piece can go in next. That's held in with one little pin tap. I pre-assembled these communication cables, and they have 4 little screws with washers that hold them from the front. I drilled a 1 1/8 inch hole. These are extenders available on Amazon, and I think they were only $10 for a pair, or $8 for a pair, 7. They weren't really expensive. And they work really easily for putting these in here, because I was able to just drill, they're square, but I was able to just drill a round hole and not go to all the trouble of trying to chisel a square hole. And it doesn't show much from the outside, and I will come back later from the inside and use some black silicone just to make sure that I don't have any ability for critters, bugs and stuff, to get inside this box. I want this box to be secure from pests. You know, carefully bring this in. And I may have to make, I'm going to have to make a little adjustment with this one wire. Just that much. Okay. And I may have to make an adjustment with one of the others. These standoff pegs, where these things get screwed into, they all have to clear the wires that I put on. And if you remember from an earlier video, these were all mounted previously. And so the screw holes all line up. And when I fasten these in with these little number 6 by 1/2 inch screws, I'm not going to tighten them down very tight, and I'm going to do them completely by hand, because I do not want to take any chances with this PCB board. This is a very important part. There are components on the back of this board that come rather close to where these pegs are, and I don't want to crush anything or damage it. This board doesn't need to be really tight. It can be loose and just hanging here for the most part. It does not need to be rock solid. I mean, in a lot of people's builds, they just lay these things in loose, or they tape them into place, or they use double-sided tape. I'm just going to lightly screw them in, and I'm not going to tighten them up. I don't want to put any pressure on this board. And so, because I spent time taking care when I was preparing all these parts, that went together pretty quickly, pretty easily. And then this part will slide right up in here. Got 2 screws that will secure that. They've already been pre-drilled and okay. And then I've got the 2 communication extenders. And they will have a little bit of extra slack that will get coiled up. And then the one on the right will get plugged in to the one on the right, the one on the left, will get plugged in, the one on the left. And then this will be the main battery negative. This goes on here. That is a 200 amp Class T fuse. And you see how, if you're careful about how the lugs get installed, they just lay in very nicely and you don't have to fight them later to try to get a twist out of the wire. It just lays in perfectly. And when I built these, I also built with the natural curve of the wire as it came off the coil, so it already had some memory. And so it kept that natural curve every place that I needed to go. And that's really important because you could really be fighting this and it would put a lot of strain on the PCB, and that's definitely not something you want. Now what I want here is 20 foot-pounds, but this is an inch-pound gauge, so I'm going to go to 240 inch-pounds. There it is. The last one is this one. This is the main battery positive. And the last time I need to use this messy stuff, so I will gratefully throw that away. You see how that wire just, that's how it came off the coil, and that's just using the memory to my advantage. It seems like mindless work when we're putting these lugs on and building up these wires, but because it's so tedious, but you really do need to spend time getting it right to help this go together later. 240 inch-pounds. Slide the cover on. And we're done. We have a main battery positive and a main battery negative. Next, I'll install the display. And that'll be with 4 more of these number 6 by 1/2 inch screws. And again, there's no reason to fasten this down really hard. It's just going to be, I don't even care if it's a little bit loose. I mean, it can be a little bit loose and it doesn't hurt me. I have put together some little labels on the Dymo labeler because this says enter, exit, num plus, num minus. I have some labels it will hopefully make it just a little bit easier to understand what those buttons are. This would typically be installed in a front panel with nice labeling on it. And I considered doing that, but decided that this would be just fine for my purposes and save me a whole lot of trouble. All right. Now, the only thing left to do here, I'll go ahead and put this back on. That'll neaten it up. No glue needed. One pin tack, it holds itself on and it's easy to remove later if I need to, but that kind of obscures the mess when you're looking down. When you're looking from this side, you can still see some of the hole, but all right, so then I have these rods with some PEX water line put around them. Now, I forgot something. I want to make sure that when I tighten these up, later, that it turns the nut here and not in the T-nut there. So, I'm going to put some blue Loctite on those. Blue Loctite is removable with some force, but it'll help keep it snug. And I'm just going to use a little. People overdo this stuff. Not necessary. I'll let that sit there, and when I get ready to put these together, it'll be ready for me. In my day job, I build fancy houses, and I'm one of those old dinosaurs that still uses copper for my piping. I think that this is probably the best use for PEX. I know that most of the houses being built today are being built with PEX, but I've seen a lot of plastic piping systems come and go, and mostly go. And I suspect that there are going to be a whole lot of disappointed people in the future when the rodents eat holes in their water lines. I haven't seen a rodent eat a hole in a copper pipe yet. And I'm glad that all those houses are being built with PEX, because I need to save the copper for my electrical stuff. But on my houses, I use copper water lines. This PEX stuff is scary to me. All right. Now, that is done. And the next thing is to put the doors on. Hot. Damn, we're moving. And this will be the first door I put on. I've already installed the hinges on the door itself, and I have a self-centering guide for pre-drilling the holes. I highly recommend these. They have a guide with a screwdriver bit inside, and I had to grind the nose off of this one because it cones in too far, and these hinges are only 1 millimeter thick, and it wouldn't bottom out in the hole, so I ground that off, and now it works perfectly. You should always modify your tools when necessary. And it keeps you from drilling too deep. And I'm going to go ahead and set that screw and come down here to this end and do this one, and then the others I'll drill all at one time. It seems to be going together pretty quickly, but it's all in that prep time. Getting it right as you're getting ready. It's kind of like the painters. 90% of the time you spend is preparing and 10% is applying the paint. Well, it's about the same here. This video might end up being about 30 minutes long, and I'm sure there's more than 4.5 hours of behind the scenes getting ready to make it look that easy. All right. Now, I'm going to rotate this around one more time. Put the big door on. That's going to look pretty nice, I think. That's gonna be good. There's a few things I forget to tell people on these videos. And I remember I did a video not too long ago about putting using a hydraulic crimper on to put the lugs on the wires. And I have seen this mentioned several times, that these crimpers that we buy, they're for metric wire. They're for 22 millimeter and 35 millimeter and 50 millimeter wire, but we're using them with American wire gauge size wire, and there is not an exact conversion. And so this notion of adjusting and modifying your tool is very important, and that is one of the places where you need to do it. I have learned that some 2-gauge lugs work with a 25 millimeter die, but some don't. And what works better for like the Anderson connector and the really nice gauge lugs, the really thick lugs, is to go to the next size up, to the 35 millimeter. And I needed to lubricate this. And if you do that, then you can use your grinder and grind the faces of that 35 millimeter and make it a little bit smaller. So going about halfway between a 25 and a 35 is the right size. And so that's what I've done. And then I mark it for 2 gauge wire. But if you put sometimes you can put a lug on and it'll feel tight with the metric close equivalent. But if you cut that, you should always cut your lugs apart. Make a test lug and cut it apart and see if you got that gas tight joint where the wire is compressed together to where it looks like solid copper. Because if you're not getting that, then you may need to grind a little off the face. And if you're getting instead these big wings where because it's too small, and you're getting these big wings of copper that are being pushed out of the lug, well, it's not good either, because you're compromising the integrity of the lug if you get too much of that going on. And so modifying your tool to work well with what you're requiring of it is important. Now, those doors are on. But if you see, this door's high here and high here. And what needs to happen is I need to use, because I've got the hinge right here, that makes the door 1 millimeter higher. Than the box. And so I was able to find some 1.5 millimeter cabinet door bumpers. And now that makes that nice and flush and a little bit quieter. What's that they say? Good enough for the girls we go out with? I hate that. That's pretty funny. All right, that's it. All done. Ready to go. Next thing that will happen is the batteries will get installed. And after that, we'll start testing full batteries instead of cells. I have one little sneak peek. So I've got the solar generator. It ended up being a pretty popular video. I'm trying to decide whether I should take this inductive phone charger and stick it to the top and run the wire down in there and wire it in so I can just lay my phone in that one little space there for charging my phone. I'm not sure. But what I've been doing is building the backup. So I'm going to do a whole walk around later, but this is a battery that doubles the capacity of the solar generator. It'll have the same size battery and it'll just be underneath this one. So that Anderson connector in the back there will stab onto this Anderson connector and tie these two together and double the capacity of the solar generator. So it's good to see y'all again. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you on the next one. Which will be this one.